Tonight, the island's chief education officer is moved to tears as she expresses condolences to the families of 3 students who died by drowning in separate incidents. The Trade Union Federation issues part 2 of its response to the government's open letter, and it's clear that it is not budging. And the CCC seeks to assure workers that they will get paid, albeit late. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovely and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Friday, the 29th of May, 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. We're on Flow, Channel 117. The broadcast is also being simulcast on Kiss FM, our Caribbean Hot FM mobile app, and our Facebook page. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. Chief Education Officer Fiona Meyer was brought to tears, reflecting on the loss of students by drowning. She says the deaths have hit the education sector very hard at a time when mortality weighs heavily on people's minds, given the COVID-19 pandemic. She says education officials grieve with the impacted families. The recent death of 17-year-old Joyeux Jean-Jacques, a student of the Sir Ira Simmons School, was the latest blow. His body was found on the Rendezvous Beach at VG on Monday afternoon.
At this juncture, we take the opportunity to really extend our condolences to his immediate family, his sporting fraternity family. We know that he was an avid basketball player, to his school community, to the district as well, and to our nation. And it is always heart-wrenching when we hear of our children passing on in that way. And we note that especially during that time, we have a special responsibility to guide and protect and to keep our children safe. We know that Jean-Jacques was part of the Our Boys Matter program, which recognized that many of our students are in need of support.
In April, a 14-year-old, Brad Abraham of Babonneau, drowned at the Bogus River. A week earlier, there had been a tragic death of a 7-year-old, Rice Smith, who drowned at the Jetwin River. He was a student of the Saldibus Combined School.
At this time of immense loss, of immense sadness, of immense heartfelt wrenches coming from our educators, from our parents, we want to say that we are with you as a Department of Education. We think of you, we send you our positive energy, and we look forward to a safe return of our students, and that their well-being will always be at the core of what we do.
The Chief Education Officer says following a period of restricted movement and partial lockdown, she understands that students are eager to be outside and get physically active, but she urges them and their guardians to ensure that safety is at the forefront of everything that they do. In other news, the president of the Trade Union Federation, Julian Monrose, has issued a Part 2 response to the government of St. Lucia's open letter. And one thing is for sure, public sector unions are standing firm on their decision that salaries diminished by 50% in cash will not cut it for their members. Monrose says no amount of coercion on the part of the government will change the facts of the matter. The Trade Union Federation's open response to the government of St. Lucia, Part 2, highlights its appeal to government to reconsider its wage proposal because of the potential damaging effect on its members. The TUF says clearly this did not make an impact on the government's clear determination to, quote, coerce the unions into accepting its proposal. The unions have reiterated that the proposal actually represents a 50% reduction in the cash that public servants need to carry out their obligations for the period.
Forcing public servants to invest in the employer's bonds against their will represents a cut in their salary for that period. Our response highlights the effects on individuals and their households. We indicated that such a move would mean that some public servants would barely be able to cover their housing and food expenses. At the end of the 3 months period, some would be indebted to the extent that their insurance policies would lapse, utilities disconnected, and household items repossessed.
Public sector unions say they find the government's request unacceptable because of the debilitating effect it will have on individuals, families, and the economy of the country.
We are particularly concerned that the majority of households in St. Lucia are headed by women, and our public service is predominantly female. So we can very well anticipate the damaging impact this is going to have on households. We have also indicated to government that apart from the economic aspect of such an action, one must look at the psychosocial impact of the implementation of government's proposal. Therefore, we are unable to support the government's request.
The TUF in the letter implored the government to ponder the question, quote, what will it profit the nation if the government implements all infrastructural projects and suffers the loss of the dignity, sanity, well-being, and life of its public servants? The TUF reminded the government that while it weighs its legal options, its members and workers have options that they can consider should that become necessary. The TUF further assured the government that no condition will prevent workers from standing for what is right. They say despite barriers, they will find a way because an organized, united, conscious, and determined people can never be defeated. Payment for Castries City Council monthly paid workers have once again been delayed. CCC CEO Wilfred Pierre says these things will happen given the unprecedented times that the entire world is facing, but he has sought to assure workers that they will get paid. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
A memo has been issued to monthly paid workers at the office of the Castries Constituency Council, noting that salaries due to be paid on Friday 29th May 2020 will be late. Workers have expressed their annoyance as this is the second time that they have had to deal with this issue of late payments. CEO of the Castries Constituency Council, Wilfred Pierre, says the organization has been facing great economic strain due to the impact of COVID-19. He explained that many measures have been put in place in the interim while the organization continues to source funds to pay workers.
So we are in a significant financial difficulty. Now, what we have done is we have having discussions with some of the unions with a view that we can somehow be able to deal with that situation because we're not happy about that. Also, what we did was to write to all the financial institutions that we know that our staff have obligations, financial obligations with, and indicating to them is to see if it is possible to provide a moratorium on the loans that they have for a period of 2 to 5 months. Also to look at having a situation where they only pay the interest for 5 months. Because we understand the difficulty on our side, so we did write to them. And it was
Pierre assured workers that their salaries will be paid and the delay is directly related to the economic challenges facing the entire country. Post-COVID-19, he says the organization will put measures in place to ensure that it is able to sustain and support its responsibilities in the event that there is another unprecedented issue facing the country or the council.
In the event that these things happen, we can now be able to use on these resources. Now, how can that happen? The CCC have resources. The CCC owns beach facility there. If you go by beach facility, there's nothing. It's just a resource that there's just a building. And that place, I can tell you, have value. We have other lands that are available to us, but they just sit there. Now, what we can do now is to be able to use these things and transfer them into some cash that we can put in a financial institution. So in the event that these things happen, we don't have to go looking to sell land. We have the resources that are there, growing interest, so it's actually developing, right? And some of the lands that we have, we can now, by selling it, we can collect property tax from it also. So we create, as most people say, a fund.
The CEO has made it clear that the institution does not want or intend to lay off any employees and is asking that they be patient as their salary is simply delayed and not cut. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
As St. Lucia prepares to reopen its borders on the 4th of June, the Ministry of Health is reminding individuals who suffer from chronic illnesses to proactively manage their health. National epidemiologist Dr. Michelle Fossois has issued a statement on the matter, urging people to monitor their condition very closely as restrictions continue to ease. She believes that by maintaining this level of vigilance, people will be better able to manage a possible COVID-19 infection. Shaka Wooding has more.
In the coming week, St. Lucia will reopen its national borders to nationals and visitors. In anticipation of this, a range of protocols have been put in place in the hotel and tourism sector to mitigate any potential risk of the transmission of COVID-19. The Ministry of Health requests that all individuals adhere to infection prevention and control guidelines.
The Ministry of Health requests that all individuals adhere to infection prevention and control guidelines, including practicing the recommended 6-foot physical distance and wearing a face mask in public. For face masks to be effective in reducing infection, they must be used properly. We ask that everyone not only use masks, but use masks properly. Ensure the mask is clean before using. Wash hands with soap and water or alcohol-based hand sanitizer before putting on the mask. The mask should be held by the ties or the loops only. The covering should be fit snugly but comfortably and allow for breathing without restriction.
The Ministry of Health reminds the public that the COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing, and though economic activity has resumed, the risks associated with poor health practices still apply. National epidemiologist Michelle Fossois is appealing to persons diagnosed with chronic illnesses to continue to actively manage their health.
The Ministry of Health reminds every individual who has been diagnosed with a chronic condition to proactively manage their health. Do ensure that medications are taken as prescribed and there is an adequate supply to avoid missing a dosage. It is important to actively monitor your condition at home as well as to access care services from your healthcare provider, whether public or private.
Anyone who feels symptomatic is asked to seek care at their nearest respiratory clinic. For further information, contact the 311 hotline. Jacko Widding, Hot 7 News.
You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, are schools ready for partial reopening on Tuesday? We tour one school that will have to implement 2 shifts to accommodate grade 6 students. Bus drivers clamor for a return to a full load of passengers in light of reopening of the island's borders. And an ex-police officer is charged with the murder of an unarmed black man in the U.S. after days of violent protests. These stories and more after the break.